a case study work done. So I am Mehzabeen Malik. I'm a user experience lead at Bounteous, and I'm also a UX mentor at IterateUX. And here's my LinkedIn. If anyone would want to reach out, they can do it here. So before getting into IterateUX, I'd like to actually tell a little about myself. I started my career as a developer, and then I moved on to UX mainly because I was not satisfied with the kind of applications I was working on or probably building, which is why I wanted to understand or empathize with the users. I wanted to understand if whatever I'm building actually has some value to the users, which is why I moved into UX. So I'm really hoping everyone are also here like that. So moving on to IterateUX. So we are a community of UXers from all experience levels and different kinds of backgrounds, including user research, content strategy, information architecture. We have different kinds of backgrounds of users in the community where everyone is welcome to learn, connect, and grow their career. We do have a lot of events, weekly and monthly. As you can see here, we do have weekly events, we have copy chats, we have portfolio and resume reviews, we do live reviews as well. Along with that, we do have design challenges and whiteboard challenges every month. Okay, so let's move on to the agenda today. What we're going to cover. We're going to see what is a case study, anatomy of a case study, the right level you need to include in a case study, and how to present your case study, how best to present your case study, in fact, and the common mistakes which generally people do while writing a case study and presenting case studies. And I'm going to also give you a couple of resources which would be helpful for you. Okay, so before we move on to what is a case study, I would like to know from any one of you here, what do you think a case study is? Anyone?
Hi, this is Amber. I think a case study is going through the process of how you created your design and what were your considerations, what were your iterations, and what were the outcomes and how you measured all of those things.
Okay. Kind of close, but that's a good start, definitely. Anyone else want to give it a try? Okay, no? Okay, so as you can see here, every great design begins with an even better story, which is absolutely true. And which is why a case study is extremely important in a project, because a case study is nothing but a story you are telling the users. So here the users are nothing but recruiters or different interviewers or design managers or anyone who is actually, or in your case, judges who are looking at your case study. So this is nothing but an example of your design work in your project, whatever you have done. That, as Amber just mentioned, it is not just a design process, it is a story you're telling. As every story, you watch movies, you watch shows, every story has an introduction, middle, and a conclusion. So that is what your case study is. It exactly represents what you have done, what you've achieved in your project. Okay, so let's go into the story arc of the case studies. As you can see here, as I mentioned before as well, we have an introduction, we have a story, or the middle, extremely critical, important aspect of the case study, and then a conclusion. So introduction is where you include the design brief, your problem statement, the challenges given to you. So you would even probably include overview. So everything which defines what this case study is all about or what this project is all about, that is what your introduction is. And then next comes the story, the middle crucial part of it, which is your design process and your UX methodologies. Whatever you've used in the design process, that is what is included in the story here. And as you all know, no story is good without a perfect conclusion. So the conclusion includes the findings, results, and takeaways. You can even call them your learning from that particular project. It could include anything, which I will go in detail in some time. Any questions so far before we move on to the next chapter? Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the anatomy of the case study. So in a case study, you would be including a title, an introduction, or an overview. So sometimes in case studies, the title and overview can be combined. However, they are still two different parts of the case study. So a title is equally important as an overview, and then a problem statement, roles and responsibilities, users and audience, scopes and constraints or limitations, you can even call that, and then your design process, outcomes, and then your learning. Let's go into detail for everyone. Okay, so coming to case study title, as I just mentioned, case study title is not just a simple description or a name for it. It needs to give the exact context of that particular project or whichever project you're currently working on. However, you don't have to include like a long essay in the case study title. It is always good to include the client or the company name. If you're doing, as in the hackathon, if you're doing it a fictitious project or any other project which is not a live client or a real-time company, you can also include what your app, I'd say, what your app is mainly related to. That is what you can include in the case study. For example, the good examples which I've mentioned here are Walmart user research for mobile app checkout. So here you can see we've mentioned what this app is. We've mentioned what we have done in the app in that particular project, and it is related to what. So if you've pretty much summed up your entire project in that particular title. So this is what a good title is. Moving on to the overview or the introduction. So introduction is nothing but setting a stage or giving a summary of whatever you've achieved in the project. It's about, it could, overview can also include your problem statement. Overview can also include about the project. Overview can also include about the company, why you've taken up this project, or what made you go into that particular direction for this particular project. So all that you can include in the overview. It just gives the right amount of details to understand the project. Like I mentioned here, background, you can also include project duration, the tools as well. Tools in the sense could be softwares or any other tools which you've used in that particular project. Any questions so far before I move on? Okay. I see thumbs up from Amber. That's a good thing. Okay, let's move on to the problem statement. Okay, before I describe here what the problem statement is, as you can all see here, I want to understand from you, from any one of you, what is the difference between a problem statement and a challenge? Can anyone describe it? I believe you already had a user research workshop before. Can anyone describe it? What a problem statement or a challenge is? No one? Okay. I can see someone on a video.
Yeah, I'll be the non-shy one. Problem
Okay.
statement, let's see. Those are kind of, it's hard because they're kind of similar and related.
Yeah.
Maybe like, yeah, you can go ahead, Amber.
Sorry. Yeah, this is Amber. I think a challenge is like, we have an issue with this. And then a problem statement is, we had an issue with this and we did this to solve it. Or is that kind of what it is? I don't know. I'm not sure. It's kind of like the same thing.
My guess
Okay.
is problem statement is like a more scoped, like it encompasses the challenge. That's my
Correct.
guess.
Correct. Yeah, you are right on point. So the challenge, as Amber mentioned as well, the first part, it is the challenge for that particular problem, what challenges it is. However, the problem statement is a little different. So whatever challenge you've been given, you define the problem statement from the challenge. So for example, if the challenge is you need to do a mobile redesign, the problem statement would be, why are you doing it? What is the actual reason behind that particular challenge which is given to you? That is a problem statement. The hypothesis is the problem statement. So that is extremely important in a case study. It shows what level of understanding you have with respect to the problem the users are facing, in fact. So as I mentioned here, problem statement, it describes a problem you had to solve and hypothesis you came up with. And what did your stakeholders ask you to build? Communicate the project's purpose and set your case study's emotional tone. Your case study could be just user research. Your case study could be including UX and visual designs. Your case study could be just prototypes. It's totally up to you how you want to build out your case study. So that sets your emotional tone as well. So that is your problem statement.
I have a question about your case study's emotional tone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like designing an app and you want it to have one emotional tone,
Mm-hmm.
does your case study need to have another one for like the judges and your like the managers and recruiters?
No, absolutely not. It is the emotional tone of your case study and how you are describing it to the judges or recruiters or anyone. So you don't have to have different emotional tones for your case studies for every different kind of users out there. It's just one emotional tone for your case study.
What I was asking is, do we want the same emotional tone that our like app is conveying?
Yes, that is your problem statement.
Okay, gotcha.
That is the problem, which is why you are trying to solve it, right? So that is the emotional tone of that particular case study, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any more questions before I move on? Guys, please feel free to ask as many questions as possible.
Are you gonna give some examples? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so I didn't specifically get the difference between a challenge and a problem statement. You said a problem statement is more like the reason why I am doing a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So say for example now, the challenge is to build a system that allows me to buy something easily. Let me just say like a funny assumption.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem system will be the reason behind that. So to make things easy, will you call that a problem statement? Or can you just throw more light? I don't get it.
Okay, so the problem statement, so you're saying the challenge for you would be to buy things easily? That was your challenge. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the problem statement for that could be, why do you need to buy something easily? For what reason? Why are the users asking for that? What is the reason behind it? Is it because they it's like not accessible digitally, or is it not accessible in the stores, or what is the reason behind it? You need to analyze that. That is what your problem statement is. Sorry, that becomes your problem statement.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you understand that? I can explain it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get it. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so moving on to your roles and responsibilities and the other parts of the case study. So roles and responsibilities are equally important in the case study, mainly because it shows how well you've collaborated with your team. it gives the interviewers or the recruiters or here in the hackathon judges, it gives a kind of sense as how well you are collaborating cross-functionally, like with other teams or within your team, or what exactly is your role in the particular project. It's like you have like 5 members in the project, and one person is doing a research, one person is just probably building up or defining the case study, one person is doing user interviews. So it definitely clears out what your specific role is. So which is why roles and responsibilities are very important in case study. User and audience. You definitely need to mention what your target audience are. You could either mention primary, secondary, tertiary audience based on what level of detail you want to mention in your case study. However, for the hackathon, you just could mention the primary audience. That is totally okay for the judges to understand what your project is focused on. However, in future, when you apply for jobs and go for interviews, you might want to show the difference why this is a primary audience and why these are secondary and tertiary audiences. So that is what you would include in your users and audience, and how you have derived that this is your primary audience. Did you do a card sorting, or did you do any kind of bullseye approach? So all this is included in your users and audience section. And then scope and constraints. Any unique or limiting factors for your particular project? Did you have any timelines, duration of the project, or did you have any budget assigned to you for the project? Or it was just, could be even, I'd say it could be a week project, or it could be a 2-day project, it could be a 3-month project. So what is all that? You need to include in scope and constraints. You should also include the challenges of your particular project in the scope and constraints. Like, what were you scoped? Did you go out of scope for the project? So all that you need to include here. So even if you're going out of your way to do something which is not scoped, you can totally include that here, saying, okay, this is the scope. However, this is the research I've done for this particular project, which gives you extra brownie points. So, okay, yeah, someone raised a hand.
Yeah, I just had just a general question. So just to reiterate, the case study is kind of like an encompassing, like in-depth, like it's also like very general about the project as well. Not just the project, right? It's like you said, it's it kind of talks about like, hey, like if I were this to be a case study, it'd be like, this is a hackathon. I'm working on a project with people I've met for like, I don't know, I've known for 2 hours, and it's due tomorrow, and the challenge would be, we live in like 4 different time zones,
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely. So definitely you can include that here. So that is one of your constraint. You have 2 different time zones or 3 different time zones. How do you collaborate with members from different time zones, right? So that is again your constraint. So how you face that particular challenge, you can totally include that in this.
Thank you.
I had a question about roles and responsibilities.
Mhm.
So what are some of the common roles and responsibilities that we would have in this hackathon? Can you give an example?
Well, depends on how big your team is.
So let's say it's a team of 3.
Okay. So if it's a team of 3, based on what your problem statement or your challenge is, maybe one of you is a UI designer, one of you is a UX designer, one of you is a UX researcher. One of you could be both, like not just UX or UI. One of you could be just a product designer who is doing technically both. One of you could be a brand designer. So these are different kinds of roles you would play in a team, especially during a hackathon, when your timelines are very, very limited, within 2 days.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next section, which is design process, the extremely important process, or I'd say important section of your case study. three important things which you need to remember in the design process is what, why, and how. So what did you do? For example, what kind of research method did you use? What design decisions you made? Were there any ideas that didn't make the cut? And what kind of constraints you had? What kind of, I'd say, I'm trying to search for an example, which is, yeah, what tools have you used as well? So all that is a part of design process, the first part of what in the design process. And next comes why. Why did you do it? Which is equally important to what did you do, right? These are interlinked. For example, why did you choose that particular research method? So in design process, you do have different kinds of UX methodologies, right? Like double diamond, or you could probably go with an agile approach. Because you are in hackathon, you would most probably go with an agile approach. Or you could simply go ahead with some other approach which you feel comfortable with your limited team members, right? So why have you chosen that particular research method? What makes it the best possible method in this circumstances? So all that is included in why. And if you've used 8 different research methods, for every single method, why you think this is the best possible method for solving this problem. So that is what you include in why. And the third crucial one is how. So how those steps helped you solve the problem. So it's not just outlining what did you do and why did you do it. It's about how they've helped you. What is the value here? If you're doing a card sorting, how it has helped you to, I'd say, define the results there, or I'd say differentiate between different kinds of empathy maps or users. So all that is included in how. Any questions here? Because this is your very important section of case study.
So I'm fairly new to UX design. I'm not sure what research methods there are available that I can use in this kind of time constraint. Can you give me some examples of that?
There are a lot of design research methods which you can include. For example, user interviews. You could even, since it's hackathon, I'm not really sure if you guys will have even time to interview different users here. So instead, what you could do is you could do simple competitive research. You could look at other apps and see how those apps are doing for this particular problem, right? What they are, how they are solving this problem. So that is competitive research, or you can even call it as competitive analysis. Or if you're doing a redesign, you could even do SWOT analysis, which is it would give you strengths, weaknesses of that particular existing site and how you can better improve the UX of that particular site. You can even go with card sorting method to probably or efficiently analyze the entire site structure or the information architecture in your particular project. For this one, there are a lot more other methods. You can go with affinity mapping, you can go with empathy maps, and you can even do personas. So personas, again, it is not always useful in the projects, but some projects it is extremely useful to understand what your target audience are. Then you have different sorts of other methods like A/B testing. You can do 2 different sites testing to see how these 2 sites are, or the same site, 2 different variants you can test to see how they are responding, how the users are responding to these 2 variants. So yeah, there are like a lot of different user research methods. I can give you some resources later on if you would like to actually read through these as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so can I move on to the next?
For sure.
Okay. Okay, so, sorry. Yeah. So as I just mentioned, so in the design process, these are what you can actually include in your case study, which is design thinking methodology, user research, which is qualitative and quantitative, persona building, affinity mapping, empathy mapping. So persona building, affinity mapping, and empathy mapping are kind of related to each other. So if you want to just include one or two of them, totally okay with that. It is only to analyze who your target audience are and to empathize with them. So totally okay if you just want to include one or even two. And then you can include wireframes in your case studies. You can include high or low fidelity prototypes, UI mockups, or if you've just done sketches on your paper, you can totally take photographs of that and include that as well in your case study. You can also include user testing. Whatever, if you've done user testing, then what are your findings in that? So all that you can include, or if you've done reiteration after your user testing. So that is another thing which you can include in your case study. Any questions before I move on?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So I have this question. When you say user testing, do you mean like the umbrella for all kind of tests you do with your users? Because there's this kind of like I don't know. I'm just trying to get the difference between user testing and usability testing. I kind of know that usability testing is like testing to know how easy it is to navigate your product, right? But then user testing, what does it really entail?
In the user testing?
Yes.
Okay,
Can it be
so
used interchangeably?
okay, so technically usability testing is what you do during user testing. So to identify if your product or whatever you've designed is correctly working, or if that is actually useful for the user, if the user is easily able to navigate through that particular, if you're building a site, if the user is able to navigate through that site without any hassle, that is what you see in user testing. If they are not, it could be manual or it could be even, I'd say, guided user testing, where the user could just, where you can guide your user saying, okay, click here and see where the user is actually going. If this is the expected behavior, is this what your user is actually expecting? If not, what is the user expecting? That will give you your learnings as well from there. And then you can also do, you can give them a particular flow, say, okay, I want to see you adding something to the cart and checking out. And then you can observe how the user actually adds a product to the cart and checks out in that particular page. If the user is facing some issues there, you will clearly understand, okay, this functionality needs to change. So all this is comes as a part of user testing.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so moving on to the next section, which is results and learning. So results is, again, very important in case study. It's not just writing a problem statement mentioning what did you do and how did you do it and why did you do it. However, how did you measure the success? How did you know that whatever you've designed is actually valuable to the users? How do you know that? Your results would show that. That is where you include all that from the findings from your user testing. If you feel, okay, the functionality is not working, you will have to reiterate and design something else for that functionality. That is how, that is what you include in your results section, like the metrics of your success. Maybe you've done user testing with like four people internally within your teams itself, like using your prototypes. You see, okay, if they're able to understand, well, 100% of the users are able to understand. If not, only I'd say, if you say only 2 people are able to understand and not the other 2, you would say 50% are able to understand, that 50% fail to understand. So this is what your metrics shows. So all that comes as part of results here. And why is it meaningful for you to include or to do that particular user testing for this product? That is what is included in results. Any questions on that before I move on to learning? Okay, I see. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Guillermo or Guillermo? I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah, Guillermo. That's
Guillermo.
fine.
Okay, yeah, I see him nodding, so I'm like kind of moving on to the next section. Do you have no questions? None of you. Okay, Amber.
one question. When you say like our results, why are they meaningful? And then you talk about like user testing internally. Like 4 out of 4 people understand this project 100%. Well, we worked on it. So like we designed it. So of course we're gonna know how to use it. So I'm struggling to understand why that is meaningful in this context.
Okay, well, in the hackathon context, it is, I'd say you just have 2 days or a few hours to design something, and you just like about 3 members in the team and you know your product very well. So in this particular context for hackathon, it might not be meaningful, but actual product case study results are extremely important, right? To understand or to tell the interviewers how your product is performing, how the users actually reacted to your product, what functionality actually was important, what functionalities the users actually liked, and how you can improve the user experience. So all that is a part of saying how meaningful your design process is, how meaningful your I'd say solution is for that particular problem. So all that should be included in this section. Did I answer your question? Amber?
Oh, I have one question while she maybe fixes her mic or something.
Okay.
Oh yeah, she said yes. Yeah, she does. Okay.
Okay.
So in this context, perhaps I'm kind of seeing this as like a 2-part case study. I don't know, maybe you can correct me, your thoughts. So like for submitting this project, that could be like as a success for us personally, like as you know, this is our first hackathon. But for as like a portfolio case study, let's say we win, you know, that could be like a very like you know, I kind of a measure of success, you know, just like yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. I don't know how else. I mean, obviously, like you said, for like product design, like how like actual metrics is probably a lot more useful.
Yeah, definitely. Because that tells, for example, you in the real world, you're actually solving a problem in the actual company once you've landed a job. So when you're working on could be I'd say a bank application, a banking application. So if you are not showing your metrics of success, how will the user who is reading your case study understand how well you've solved their problem? Is it even useful for the bank? Is it useful for the users? How will they even understand without actually reading through your metrics, right?
Right.
So they don't know if you've actually succeeded in solving or if you failed in solving the problem, right? So that is extremely important there.
Thank you.
So for hackathon, you might want to just include, okay, if you've done internal user testing, like within yourselves, you could just include, okay, we've done like 3 or 4 iterations for this or 2 iterations for this. And these are the differences in these iterations. And this is how, you know, we've improved the user experience for this product. Or if you're including your visuals or UI design as well, like prototypes and stuff in the case study. So you can also include that as a part of your results, saying, we've gone with these brand colors. We didn't find it useful, so we've reiterated, changed this or modified this to these brand colors and give the reasoning. Why do you? What made you change that? So that is your finding and your result, right? So, did I answer your question there?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So the next thing which is important is learning, or you can even call it as takeaways. So learnings is where you actually include your personal thoughts about your project. Okay, you worked with 3 members in the team. How did you feel? You have 3 different time zones. How did you collaborate? So all that, was it challenging or was it easy? How did every one of you accommodate each other's schedules? So all that and can be included in your personal thoughts. And then the limitations faced in your particular project for these 2 days. So limitations are, you just met, your other team members just now. You don't even know how they work, how they think. So that is something like that is another limitation where you just dived into the project directly. You don't even know, you didn't even have time to get to know the other person's thoughts. You didn't even have time to brainstorm on the other, like with the other person. So that is one of your limitation. Your limitation again, you may not know what, I'd say, what kind of technologies are actually successful in this particular project which you're kind of working. So that is one of your limitation. You might be given only a set of tools, may not be that is not sufficient for you to work. So that is one of your limitations. So all these are your learnings where you can include in this section. And how well you've collaborated. Are you looking forward to working with these people again? Have you learned anything, any new research methods while working with these other team members? All that you can include here. Okay, so I'm moving on to the next section if no one has any questions here. Okay, so we've seen now what a case study needs to have or needs to include, and what what design methodologies you can include here, what design all the process details which you can include here in the case study. However, when you're actually writing a case study, you might do, like, I'd say 10 research methods you might use in your project. What is the right level of detail which you need to actually include in your case study to impress the interviewers or impress the judges, right? That is important. So let's see that. As you can see, it's all about balance. Include key highlights. Don't include long paragraphs or literally write theories and theories. Never do that in your case study. I've seen portfolios or I've seen case studies where people do that. To be honest, as an interviewer, we don't have, I'd say we spend like 5 minutes on a portfolio or on a case study just to scan through. We don't have time to read through the entire case study, like pages and pages. So we just want to see key highlights, right? So even if you're writing a long case study or different kinds of paragraphs, use some different kind of styling there. Underline the key points or make it bold or italicize them. Show the interviewers or the judges, okay, these are the key highlights, so that we don't have to scan through the entire case study. It's very difficult, right? So that is important. And then, as I said here, don't serve everything at once. You don't need to include all the methods of your research. You might do personas, affinity mapping, empathy maps in your actual user research while working on the project. You don't have to include all three. You could just include user personas, or you could just include empathy maps. And however, when you're explaining to the judges, when you're explaining to the interviewer, you can actually say, okay, we have worked through personas and then empathy maps, and this is what we've derived at it, right? So it is about how well you describe your process. It's not about what all you've included in your case study. So you don't have to include everything. Just include key important facts or points, which you feel is extremely important in the case study, which the interviewers need to see on your case study or read through it. Another important aspect is show your iterations. If you've done sketches on your paper, show those on the case study. If you, after your sketches, if you've actually done prototypes, show those on your case study. The interviewer or the judges, they need to see how you've evolved, how you've grown while working on your case study or while working on your project. So that is important. Any questions here? No, I see him nodding again. Guillermo, okay. Let's move on to present a case study, which I believe is super important for everyone here. So, okay. How to present. Most important thing is, the very first thing what you do is introduce yourself. and give an overview of your project, what you worked on. Just, you don't have to like talk a lot in the overview. Just mention key highlights, like 2 to 3 lines, saying, this is the project, this is what I've done, this is what we've done as a team, and these are the tools used. That is totally enough for the overview, so that the judge or the interviewer understands, okay, what is your project all about? That is enough. It's just a summary. And then talk about the team setup, your role, and your activity in the project. As I mentioned before, roles and responsibilities are very important. And then talk about the main challenge in the project, which is your problem statement. So if the challenge, if this is the challenge which you've been given, mention that this is the challenge and this is what we've defined as the problem statement. That is important for the judges to analyze how well or how quick you're thinking. That is important. Next, describe your process. You don't have to talk through again the entire design process. Again, mention key highlights in your design process. Okay, you've done seven methods in your design process. You've done interviews, you've done card sorting, you've done empathy maps, and then you've done user testing. So take them through a journey. As I said, case study is a story. So take them through a journey, saying, okay, this is what the introduction is. This is what my story is. This is what we've done. So that is important. That will actually keep your judges more focused, and they would want to listen to you. They would want to hear you out. Okay. And next, UX methods and user insights. I know hackathon, you would not have a lot of user insights here. However, you can still do competitive analysis. You can go through ratings and reviews of different apps, what they've done as part of user research. So you can highlight that. If you can totally say, okay, since we are not doing any user interviews, this is what the reviews and ratings say, and this is what we found from different sites in our competitive analysis. You can totally say that. I heard someone talking. So is there a question? No? Okay. Next, after your user methods, show your solution. Highlight, okay, this is our solution. This is how we've explained you this, the design process. This is our solution for it, right? So that is again important. So when you're seeing here, whatever I'm actually highlighting for presenting the case study, it is just highlights, right? I'm not asking you to talk through like paragraphs and paragraphs or essays, right? Just take them through highlights of your entire design process for your judges. That is extremely important. And the most critical is elaborate on at least one major design decision. If you're including your UI prototypes, or if you're solving a particular problem in your UX thesis or the hypothesis, mention why is it major, like why is it extremely important decision for the users, right? So that shows, okay, you've actually, you know your subject, right? You know your audience very well. You empathize with them. You know, okay, you're not just doing like following the design process blindly like every other person. You know your stuff. That is what is important there. And then showcase your results. It could be whatever you're showing the prototypes, or if you're taking them through a flow, or if you're showing some animations or whatever you want to take them through, you can show it in your results section. Another thing which is extremely important, which I tell everyone, all my mentees, is rehearse. Before presenting a case study, talk, stand in front of a mirror, talk to yourself. Confidence is extremely important. This I'm not supposed to tell in the hackathon, but I will still tell to every person. Even if you kind of don't sound confident while presenting, judges may not listen to you much. They might be like, okay, do you even actually know what you're talking about? I think someone else in your team actually worked on it, and you're just, kind of iterating on what they have worked on. You're just kind of copying and telling us. So, which is why always confidence is extremely important while presenting your case study. So rehearse 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, it's up to you till you feel confident. So that is about presenting the case study. Hope it is helpful for everyone. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, there's a question. Oh, finally it's working. Sorry about that. I do have a question. So when we're showcasing our case study and we're presenting it, do we present it through PowerPoint, or like what's the process? Because in Figma, you can go through like the prototype and show like how it works through your apps, but I'm not sure exactly how to incorporate that into, I don't know, like a PDF or a PowerPoint or something you would like present to a recruiter, because we don't really have time to make like a site or anything like that that would encompass it.
Absolutely. That's a very valid question what you've asked. So since it is a hackathon and you just have like 2 days and you need to submit your work tomorrow and present tomorrow, I would totally recommend you to go ahead, create a Google Slides and start writing content in your Google Slides. That is totally available online. You can even use Google Slides for collaborating with your other team members as well. So you don't have to do all work all by yourself. So you can just create the Google Slides, start putting your part of content, and then they can also include their set of content in the Google Slides. But again, as since it is a presentation, you never write paragraphs and paragraphs in Google Slides. Just highlight important key highlights and statements. That's enough. And talk more. That's it.
Awesome.
Perfect. Okay, so moving on to the common mistakes, which pretty much I've seen a lot of people doing. So let's quickly walk through that. I hope I'm not going overboard on the time. I will try to quickly walk through this one. Okay, so the common mistakes, as I have been reiterating during my entire presentation here, writing long essays. Interviewers and judges don't have time to read through everything. So never write long essays in your case studies. Next, not enough information in summary. So if you guys recall, I did mention writing an overview or an introduction of your project in the case study initially. So there, the right amount of detail is enough. However, there are case studies where people don't include everything because the case study would get too long, which is why they just include 2 or 3 sentences, which is enough. 2 or 3 sentences is enough for the overview. However, if you're not actually including valid or required information in that, it is of no use. So that is something which you need to think about. The third important aspect is only share the methods and tools. Never do that. If you're writing, okay, this is my design methodology and this is the tools I've used like Photoshop, or I've used Sketch, or I've used Figma. Okay, why have you used that? I don't know, as an interviewer or as a judge. So explain your methods, explain why you've chosen that particular tool in your specific project while working on it. Explain that. And using stock photos to showcase methods. Never use stock photos. That is, it's like you can find tons and tons of stock photos, stock imagery for case studies or anything online. Always go with your photos. If you're doing some work in your project, start taking photos, even be it mobile photography, not a problem. Just include that. It gives that personal touch to your case study. It shows, okay, you've actually done work, right? So never include stock photos in your case studies. Or if you want to include some sort of an image for a persona or something, take a screenshot of a persona, what you have worked on, and include that in your case study, right? Do not include some kind of a template screenshot in your case study. It is not useful. And people don't proofread often. the case studies. I've seen a lot of grammatical mistakes. When you read your case studies, when you read what you're writing, you may not notice these mistakes. So always make sure someone else is reading your case study before presenting, right? Be it your team members or be it someone else. Just ask them to proofread your case study. They will be easily able to pinpoint your, whatever grammatical mistakes are. So it's clear and clean for the judges or the interviewers to see. Next, not closing the case study properly. As I mentioned before, ending of a story is extremely important, how well it is. So close your case study properly. Tell them, this is my result, these are my iterations, and this is what I learned from my project. This is what I feel, this is what I've understood. This is how I've collaborated with my other team members. This is useful for me. It was not useful for me. This is what I've learned. That is important in your conclusion. That shows how well you can gel with other team members, how well you can gel with other members in a work culture, right? That is important. So these are the common mistakes. Any questions here? No. Okay. I'm moving on to the resources. So I've also mentioned here a couple of resources where you can just read through these. I've mentioned a couple of nice case studies which were done right. So you can go through this link and see how they've written their case studies. It'll give you an example as to what all you can include in your case studies as well. It'll give you kind of an insight. And these are the websites which you can go through. Nielsen Normal Group, always the best website to do research. Always. You can blindly trust that website. And Interaction Design Foundation, again, very useful resource. UX folios for, I'd say, a hardcore UXer. UX folio case studies are extremely useful, extremely, because they have the right level of detail they include in the case studies. So UX folios is a very good resource, which you can utilize for building out your case studies. So yeah, that's about it. My presentation is done and I'm glad I was on time. So if you have any more questions, please do let me know. Thank you, everyone.